My name is Hazel Walker. I'm 38, and I just got served with lawsuit papers from my parents. The same parents who kicked me out on a freezing January night when I was 16 and pregnant. For 22 years, they've been ghosts. Now suddenly they're suing me for grandparent rights to my daughter and demanding a share of my business. They have absolutely no idea what they've just awakened in me. Before I get into my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below, hit that like button, and subscribe if you want to hear more stories of survival and justice. Trust me, you'll want to stick around to see how I handled these people who thought they could abandon me, then waltz back demanding what's mine. Back in high school, I was Hazel Matthews' junior class vice president with a 3.8 gigapascals varsity volleyball player and girlfriend of Jason Bennett, our school's quarterback. We were the typical all-American couple in our small town of Lakeside, Pennsylvania. My parents, William and Patricia Matthews, were pillars of the community, my father, a bank manager, and my mother, the church choir director. We attended service every Sunday, and our family projected the image of perfection that my parents carefully cultivated. The day I realized I was pregnant remains burned into my memory. It was December 12th, sitting in the girls' bathroom stall during lunch period, staring at that little pink line that would change everything. Jason and I had only had sex twice, both times with protection, but somehow it had failed. I remember pressing my hand against my still flat stomach, thinking this couldn't possibly be happening to me. I told Jason first meeting him behind the bleachers after football practice. I'd rehearsed what to say all day, but the words still came out in a terrified jumble. "I'm pregnant," I finally managed to say. His face went from confusion to shock to something I'd never seen before, fear mixed with anger. "That's impossible." "We used condoms," he said, backing away like I had a contagious disease. "I know, but it happened anyway." "How do I know it's even mine?" His voice turned cold, and I felt like I'd been slapped. "What, Jason, you're the only person I've ever been with." He just shook his head. "My dad has connections for a football scholarship. I can't have this right now. This isn't my problem, Hazel." And just like that, he walked away. The boy who had told me he loved me just 3 days earlier disappeared from my life in an instant. By the next day, rumors had already started circulating. I was suddenly the school slut, even though Jason had been my first and only. Telling my parents was infinitely worse. I waited until Sunday after church, hoping the setting might inspire some Christian charity. We had just finished dinner, my mom's roast beef, which I'd barely touched due to morning sickness that inexplicably hit in the evenings. "Mom, Dad, I need to tell you something," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "What is it, honey?" My mother placed her fork down her brow, furrowing at my serious tone. The words stuck in my throat. "I'm pregnant." The silence that followed was deafening. My father's face turned a shade of purple I'd never seen before. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes immediately filling with tears. "What did you just say?" My father finally spoke, his voice dangerously quiet. "I'm pregnant. Almost 2 months." "Who is the father?" he demanded. "Jason Bennett, but he doesn't." That football hooligan, I knew he was trouble. My father slammed his fist on the table, making the dishes jump. "No daughter of mine would do this. Do you understand what this does to our reputation in this town at church?" My mother was silently crying now, not looking at me. "Patricia, say something to your daughter," my father commanded. "How could you, Hazel? We raised you better than this. What will Pastor Mitchell think? What will everyone think of us?" Her words cut deeper than my father's rage. "I'm sorry, but I need your help," I pleaded. "I'm scared." My father stood up, towering over the table. "There's only one solution to this. You'll get an abortion, and we'll put this whole ugly incident behind us. No one needs to know." I instinctively wrapped my arms around my stomach. "No, I can't do that. I won't do that." "Then you leave me no choice," he said, his voice ice cold. "If you insist on ruining your life and bringing shame to this family, you won't do it under my roof." "William," my mother gasped, finally looking up. "Be quiet, Patricia. I won't have a pregnant teenager living in my house, flaunting her sin for the whole town to see." He turned to me. You have 1 hour to pack your things and get out. Dad, please, I sobbed. It's freezing outside. Where am I supposed to go? You should have thought about that before you opened your legs, he spat. You made an adult decision, now you get to live with adult consequences. My mother followed him as he stormed out of the dining room. I could hear them arguing in hushed tones, but she didn't come back to comfort me. After 20 minutes, she appeared at my bedroom door as I frantically shoved clothes into my backpack. Hazel, she started, then stopped. Your father is very upset. Give him some time to calm down. He's kicking me out, Mom. I'm 16. It's just, this is such a disappointment. We had such hopes for you. She handed me $300, her secret emergency cash. This is all I can do right now. Maybe call us in a few weeks. And that was it. My father stood by the front door as I left, not even looking at me. My mother stayed in the kitchen crying, but doing nothing to stop what was happening. I stepped out into the January night with nothing but a backpack of belongings, $300, and a life growing inside me that had just cost me my family, my boyfriend, and my home. The bitter Pennsylvania winter felt like a slap to my face as I stood on our porch watching the door close behind me. For a moment, I just stood there, certain my parents would come to their senses and let me back in. The porch light went out instead. Message received. With nowhere else to go, I called my best friend Brooke from the payphone at the corner gas station. Her parents reluctantly agreed to let me stay, but only for 2 weeks. We can't enable this behavior, her father said within earshot, as if teenage pregnancy was contagious. Those 2 weeks were spent in a haze of panic and desperation. I applied for every job that would consider a visibly pregnant high school junior with no experience. Fast food, restaurants, convenience stores, janitor positions, I was rejected everywhere. We're not hiring right now, they'd say, eyes drifting to my stomach. The hallways at school became a gauntlet. Former friends avoided eye contact. Teachers who once praised my academic promise now looked at me with thinly veiled disappointment. I overheard Mrs. Taylor, my English teacher, telling another teacher, "Such potential wasted on poor choices." The only adult who showed me any kindness was Mrs. Susan Kennedy, the school counselor. She called me into her office during third period one day. "Hazel, I've heard what's happening. Is there anything I can do to help?" I broke down in her small office, telling her everything: my parents' rejection, my homelessness, Jason's abandonment. "What about graduation?" she asked. "You've always been college-bound." Through my tears, I admitted I didn't see how I could continue school. "There's an alternative program for students in special circumstances," she explained. "You could complete your coursework remotely and still graduate on time." For the first time in weeks, a tiny spark of hope flickered inside me. Mrs. Kennedy helped me enroll in the program and even connected me with a women's resource center that helped me apply for emergency housing assistance. By the time my 2 weeks at Brooks ended, I had secured a tiny studio apartment in the roughest part of town. The kind of place where you hear arguments through paper-thin walls and fall asleep to police sirens. But it was shelter, and the rent was just within reach after I landed 2 minimum-wage jobs, morning shifts at a diner and evening hours cleaning offices. Between work and school, I barely had time to think, which was probably a blessing. My body was changing rapidly, but I couldn't afford proper prenatal care. The free clinic downtown saw me once a month, where a rushed doctor would check my vitals, listen to the heartbeat, and send me on my way with pamphlets on fetal development. At 6 months pregnant, I developed severe anemia. My boss at the diner found me passed out in the stockroom. The hospital visit depleted my meager savings, leaving me with nothing for the next month's rent. I worked double shifts with swollen ankles and back pain that brought tears to my eyes. One evening, I stopped by Brooks to pick up some maternity clothes her mother had offered to give me. Through the living room window, I saw Brooke and Jason cuddled on the couch, laughing at something on TV. He had his arm around her shoulders, comfortable, in a way that made it clear this wasn't their first intimate moment. I didn't knock. I just stood there watching my former best friend with the father of my unborn child, feeling the last threads of my old life snapping. Later that night, Brooke called to ask where I'd been. "I saw you with Jason," I said flatly. "Hazel, I'm sorry. It just happened. He was so upset about everything and I was just comforting him and then, don't. Just don't." I hung up and blocked her number, the final severance from my past life. By my third trimester, I was completely alone. No friends, no family, just an unborn child and a mountain of responsibilities. I worked until my feet were so swollen I couldn't fit them into shoes. I studied late into the night, by the dim light of a desk lamp I'd found discarded on a curb. And I prepared for motherhood by reading every book on pregnancy and childbirth I could find at the public library. "You're a fighter, my diner manager," Marge told me one day as I struggled to refill salt shakers with shaking hands. "Most girls your age would have crumbled by now. I didn't feel like a fighter. I felt like someone treading water in the middle of an ocean, just trying not to drown." But her words stayed with me, becoming a mantra on the hardest days. "You're a fighter, Hazel. Don't give up now." The contractions started during my shift at the diner. At first I dismissed them as Braxton Hicks. I was only 38 weeks along, but when my water broke in, the employee bathroom reality hit hard. Marge found me gripping the sink, doubled over in pain. "Jesus, girl, you're in labor. Why didn't you say something?" "I thought I had more time," I gasped, as another contraction ripped through me. She helped me to a chair while the cook called 911. Between contractions, a terrible thought struck me. I was completely unprepared. The crib was still unassembled in my apartment. I hadn't packed a hospital bag. I had no one to call. The ambulance arrived, and the paramedics efficiently transferred me onto a stretcher. "Is there someone you want us to contact?" one of them asked. I shook my head, fighting back tears. The hospital was overwhelming, bright lights, beeping machines, and medical staff speaking urgently over me. I was quickly assessed and moved to a delivery room. The contractions were coming every 2 minutes now, each one more intense than the last. "You're progressing quickly," the doctor said after examining me. "You're already at 7 centimeters. A nurse named Tara stayed by my side, coaching me through the pain. Unlike the others, she didn't look at me with pity or judgment. When I cried out during a particularly vicious contraction, she held my hand firmly. "You're doing great, Hazel. Many women twice your age don't handle labor this well." 12 hours later, with one final push, my daughter entered the world, 7 pounds, 4 ounces of perfect screaming life. The doctor placed her on my chest, and I felt an overwhelming surge of love unlike anything I'd ever experienced. "Hello, Samantha," I whispered the name I'd chosen months ago. "I'm your mom." In that moment, looking at her tiny fingers and the soft, dark hair covering her head, I made a silent promise. No matter what happens, you will always know you're loved. You will never know abandonment. The postpartum hours were a blur of visitors, none for me but doctors and nurses checking on Samantha and teaching me how to breastfeed, change diapers, and swaddle. Tara checked on me frequently, bringing extra food trays and sitting with me during her breaks. "Do you have help at home?" she asked gently. I shook my head. "It's just us." She frowned. "Family, friends?" "No one." I told her my story not for pity, but because it felt important that someone know. She listened without interruption, her face showing flashes of anger at all the people who had failed me. "You know," she said, "finally I work here 3 days a week. The other days I run a support group for young mothers. You should come. We offer childcare during meetings, and it might help to connect with others in similar situations." Before I was discharged, she gave me her number and the address of the community center where they met. It was the first genuine offer of support I'd received in months. As I prepared to leave, a wild impulse seized me. I asked to use the hospital phone and dialed my parents' number. My hand shook as it rang. My mother answered. "Hello, Mom." My voice cracked. "I had the baby. A girl. Her name is Samantha." There was a long pause. I thought I heard a stifled sob. "Mom, please say something." The line went dead. I stood there holding the receiver, the dial tone buzzing in my ear as my last hope for reconciliation died. The hospital sent us home in a taxi hospital policy not to discharge without transportation, and they took pity when I admitted I had no car and no one to call. Walking into my tiny apartment with Samantha felt surreal. The space seemed smaller, dingier, more depressing than before. I placed her gently in the bassinet I'd bought secondhand and sat on the edge of my bed, overwhelmed by the reality of our situation. The responsibility of this tiny human was now entirely mine. Every need, every cry, every future hope and dream, all of it depended on me alone. That night, as Samantha slept fitfully beside me, I cried silently into my pillow. Not from self-pity, but from fierce, protective love mixed with terror. What if I couldn't do this? What if I failed her like everyone had failed me? In the darkness, Samantha stirred and began to whimper. I wiped my tears and picked her up, cradling her against my chest. "It's okay," I whispered, even as I wondered if it ever would be. "Mommy's here. I won't leave you. We'll figure this out together." As if she understood, she quieted her tiny hand, wrapping around my finger. In that moment, something shifted inside me. The fear didn't disappear, but it was joined by a steely determination that would define everything that followed. "I promise you," I told her, "we're going to build something amazing. It's just you and me against the world right now, but someday they'll all wish they hadn't walked away from us." 3 years passed in a blur of exhaustion, small victories, and endless hustle. By the time Samantha was toddling around our slightly bigger apartment, I had completed my GED and was taking online business classes through the community college. Each day followed the same grueling routine wake at 5 a.m. study, until Samantha stirred work my morning shift at the medical office where I'd landed a receptionist job, pick up Samantha from the subsidized daycare work evening shifts. Cleaning offices while a neighbor watched her, then study again after she was asleep. The breaking point came when Samantha developed pneumonia. I had to miss 2 weeks of work to care for her, and even with my meager savings, the rent fell short. I was packing our essentials, certain we'd be evicted when someone knocked on the door. Kevin Walsh, the landlord's son, stood there with an envelope. "Dad wanted me to check if you were planning to pay the balance this week." I broke down, explaining Samantha's illness and my missed work. Instead of the eviction notice, I expected Kevin surprised me. "I could watch her sometimes," he offered awkwardly. "I work from home most days, at least until you catch up." I was suspicious at first. No one offered help without expecting something in return. But desperation won out, and Kevin proved to be genuine. He was a graphic designer who worked freelance, and watching Samantha a few hours daily barely disrupted his routine. She adored him, especially when he let her scribble on his digital tablet. One evening, as I sorted through medical bills at my kitchen table, a thought struck me. I'd been cleaning offices for 3 years, including several medical practices. I'd noticed how often they complained about cleaning services that didn't understand medical requirements. What if I started my own cleaning company, I mused aloud, specializing in medical facilities? Kevin, who had stopped by to drop off Samantha's forgotten teddy bear, overheard me. "That's actually brilliant. Medical cleaning requires certification and specialized knowledge. You could charge premium rates." The idea took root. I researched industry requirements and discovered a certification program I could complete online. I developed a business plan for my classes and created a bare-bones website with Kevin's help. I named it MediClean Solutions and invested my tax return in basic supplies and proper insurance. My first client was Dr. Reynolds, a dentist who knew me from my receptionist job and was perpetually unhappy with his current cleaning service. "If you can do better, the contract is yours," he said skeptically. I spent all night deep cleaning his office, disinfecting according to medical standards and organizing supplies in a way I knew his staff would appreciate. The next morning, his office manager called. "Whatever you're charging, we'll pay it. When can you start regular service?" Word spread quickly. Within 6 months, I had 8 regular clients and had to hire my first employee, a single mother I met through Tara's support group. By Samantha's 4th birthday, I was managing 3 employees and had moved us to a safer neighborhood. The business was growing steadily when Ryan Cooper approached me with an investment opportunity. He had capital to help expand MediClean in exchange for a 30% stake. With his money, we could take on larger medical facilities and hospitals. "You've built something impressive," he said smoothly. "But to scale, you need someone with connections and capital." I agreed to a trial partnership. For 3 months, things moved rapidly. We secured contracts with 2 hospitals and a surgical center. I hired more staff, invested in better equipment, and even registered a trademark. Then Ryan disappeared, along with our 4 largest clients. I discovered he'd been meeting them privately, offering to undercut our prices through his newly formed company. He'd copied my business model completely down to a nearly identical name, MediClean Pro. "He can't do this," I told my lawyer desperately. "Those were my clients, my business model." "We can fight it," she replied grimly, "but it'll be expensive with no guarantee of winning." I'd been betrayed again, this time professionally. MediClean Solutions teetered on the brink of collapse. I had to lay off half my staff and move back to a cheaper apartment. Some nights after Samantha was asleep, I considered giving up. But I looked at my sleeping daughter now, almost 5, and remembered my promise. We wouldn't be defeated. Not by Ryan, not by my parents, not by anyone. I pivoted. Instead of competing directly with Ryan for hospital contracts, I approached nursing homes and rehabilitation centers markets he deemed too small to bother with. I developed specialized protocols for these facilities and built relationships with administrators who appreciated personal attention from the owner. Slowly, methodically, MediClean Solutions rebuilt. I worked 80-hour weeks, often bringing Samantha to jobs with me. She'd sit quietly coloring while I demonstrated proper sanitizing techniques to new employees or negotiated contracts with facility directors. By her 6th birthday, we were back on solid ground. I had 12 employees, a small office, and a growing reputation for excellence in specialized medical cleaning. Ryan's company, built on shortcuts and undercutting, had begun losing clients after several infection control violations. "He tried to steal what I built," I told Kevin one evening as we celebrated landing a major contract. "But he didn't understand that MediClean isn't just about cleaning. It's about standards, relationships, and reputation. You can't steal those things." Kevin raised his glass. To the comeback kid he toasted, and to never underestimating Hazel Walker. I smiled, feeling for the first time that we weren't just surviving, we were thriving. The girl who'd been kicked out with nothing had built something valuable, something entirely her own. And no one could take that away from us. The doorbell rang on Samantha's 8th birthday as we finished setting up for her space-themed party. I was expecting the cake delivery, not the ghost from my past who stood on my porch. "Hazel," my mother said, her voice thin and hesitant. She looked older, grayer, but unmistakably Patricia Matthews. I froze my hand, gripping the doorframe. 8 years of silence, and she appears on today, of all days. "What are you doing here?" I managed to ask. "I wanted to see my granddaughter." She held out a gift-wrapped package. "For her birthday." Behind me, I heard Samantha ask Kevin, who was at the door. I stepped onto the porch, pulling the door nearly closed behind me. "How did you even know it was her birthday? Or where we live?" "I saw your business in the paper. That article about female entrepreneurs." A hint of pride flickered across her face before disappearing. "The reporter mentioned you were a single mother with an 8-year-old daughter." The fact that she'd been keeping tabs on me without reaching out stoked a slow-burning anger. 8 years, Mom. You've had 8 years to call, write, or visit. 8 years of birthdays, Christmases, first steps, first words, all moments you chose to miss. She had the decency to look ashamed. "I know. I should have stood up to your father. I should have done so many things differently. Where is he?" "Waiting in the car to kick me out of my own home this time." "He doesn't know I'm here." She glanced nervously at the street, as if he might materialize. "Things haven't been good, kind between us for a while." I laughed bitterly. "Let me guess. You finally realized he's a controlling, judgmental tyrant." "Hazel, please. I'm trying here." Trying now, after I've spent 8 years building a life without you, after I gave birth alone, worked 3 jobs while raising a child, started a business from nothing, now you want to try? Tears filled her eyes. I made a terrible mistake. We both did. But she's my granddaughter, and I'd like to know her. The door opened behind me, and Samantha peered out curiously. Mom, the other kids are arriving. My mother's eyes widened at the sight of her dark hair like mine, but with her grandfather's blue eyes. Go back inside, sweetheart. I'll be right there, I said gently. After she disappeared, I turned back to my mother. You don't get to walk in and out of her life on a whim. She's not a do-over for the daughter you abandoned. That's not fair. Fair. You want to talk about fair? My voice rose. Was it fair to throw your pregnant teenage daughter onto the street in January? Was it fair to hang up when I called from the hospital after giving birth? Was it fair to miss 8 years of her life because Dad said so? I've made mistakes, she admitted. Terrible ones. But your father is sick, Hazel. Cancer. The treatments are expensive and our insurance doesn't cover everything. And there it was, the real reason for her sudden appearance. So you're here for money, I stated flatly. No, I mean, I do want to reconnect, but yes, we're struggling financially. William can't work anymore and the medical bills. She trailed off. I stared at her, this stranger who shared my blood but had chosen comfort and compliance over her own child. Part of me wanted to slam the door in her face. Another part, the part that still remembered being her daughter, couldn't quite do it. I'll write you a check. Once. For medical expenses only, I said eventually. But don't mistake this for forgiveness or an invitation into Samantha's life. You made your choice 8 years ago. Hazel, please. I know we hurt you. Hurt me. You destroyed me. Or you tried to. The only reason I survived was because I had to for her. I went inside and wrote a check for $5,000, money we could afford now, but that would have seemed an impossible sum when I was struggling alone with a newborn. When I returned, I handed her the check and the gift she'd brought. Take this back. If and when Samantha has a relationship with you, it will be her choice, not a transaction. My mother looked at the check, then back at me. You've done well for yourself, she said, a strange mix of pride and regret in her voice. No thanks to you. Will you at least think about letting me see her? Get to know her? I'll think about it, I conceded, knowing I owed Samantha the truth about her grandparents eventually. But on my terms, and only if you acknowledge what you did. No pretending it didn't happen, no teenage rebellion narrative to make yourselves feel better. She nodded, tucking the check into her purse. As she turned to leave, she paused. He asks about you, you know. Your father. He'd never admit it, but he keeps that newspaper article in his bedside drawer. Tell him I said family matters, I replied, coldly echoing his words from years ago. And that includes taking responsibility for the family you abandoned. After she left, I leaned against the closed door, trying to compose myself before returning to the birthday party. Kevin found me there, shaking. Was that? I nodded. My mother. Apparently my father has cancer and they need money. Are you okay? I will be, I said, straightening my shoulders. We have a space princess waiting for her cake. That night, after the party ended and Samantha was asleep, surrounded by new toys, Kevin and I sat on the porch swing. Do you think she'll be back? He asked. Probably. Now that she knows where the money is. I stared at the stars, thinking about cycles and choices. The thing is, I'm not that scared, angry girl anymore. I'm not at their mercy. And that changes everything. Mom, have you seen my blue sweater? 15-year-old Samantha called from upstairs. The one with the silver buttons? I smiled, stirring pancake batter in our spacious kitchen. Check the laundry room, honey. 7 years had transformed our lives beyond recognition. Mediclean Solutions had exploded from a small local business to a regional powerhouse with over 50 employees and contracts with medical facilities across 3 states. We'd moved from our modest house to a beautiful colonial in one of the city's best neighborhoods, and Samantha attended a private school known for its science program. Looking at my teenage daughter, now confident, bright, so similar to how I'd been at her age, sometimes triggered waves of protective fear. I'd catch myself watching her interact with boys, analyzing their every gesture for signs they might hurt her the way Jason had hurt me. I'd overreact to normal teenage rebellion, terrified she might repeat my mistakes. You can't bubble wrap her, Kevin reminded me gently when I expressed these fears. Our relationship had evolved over the years from friendship to business partnership when he joined Mediclean as marketing director and eventually to romance. His steady presence had healed parts of me I thought permanently broken. The business continued growing. We purchased an office building downtown, expanded our training program for employees, and developed proprietary cleaning products specifically for medical environments. I was featured in business magazines as a self-made success story, though I always insisted on privacy regarding my personal journey. Kevin proposed on Christmas morning that year, getting down on one knee in front of Samantha, who filmed the entire thing while squealing with excitement. For the first time in my life, I felt completely secure, professionally, financially, and emotionally, which is why the betrayal blindsided me so completely. It started with accounting discrepancies I noticed while reviewing quarterly reports. Small amounts missing invoices that didn't match our service records equipment purchases without corresponding delivery receipts. When I mentioned it to Kevin, he suggested it might be clerical errors. We've scaled so quickly, he reasoned. Growing pains are normal. But the inconsistencies continued and the amounts grew larger. I hired a forensic accountant who confirmed my worst fears: someone was systematically embezzling from Mediclean and had been for over a year. The total missing approached $400,000. I installed monitoring software on company computers and restricted access to financial systems. Within 2 weeks, I had my answer: late-night logins to our accounting system from Kevin's computer, careful adjustments to invoices and wire transfers to an offshore account. Confronting him was the hardest thing I'd done since telling my parents I was pregnant. We sat in my home office, the evidence spread between us. Why? I asked, my voice hollow. We were building something together. We were building a family. He couldn't meet my eyes. The gambling started small, just poker nights with clients. Then sports betting. By the time I realized how deep I was, the debts were crushing. I was going to pay it back. All of it. With what more stolen money, I pushed the engagement ring across the desk toward him. Get out of my house. Your things will be packed and sent to you. Hazel, please. I love you. I love Samantha. We can fix this. There's no fixing betrayal, Kevin. I've learned that lesson enough times. The legal battle that followed was brutal. Kevin claimed he was entitled to company shares as a founding partner despite having joined years after I started Mediclean. His lawyer painted him as the business genius behind our success, minimizing my contributions. It was devastatingly familiar, another man trying to take credit for what I'd built. The case dragged on for months, draining resources and energy. Worse, it attracted media attention with several business publications covering the dispute. Our competitors seized the opportunity, approaching our clients with promises of stability and discounted rates. Mediclean's reputation suffered. We lost contracts. I had to lay off staff. Each night I'd come home exhausted from fighting fires on all fronts, only to face Samantha's questions about Kevin, whom she'd viewed as a father figure. He made a mistake, she argued one night. Everyone deserves a second chance. Some mistakes break trust beyond repair, I tried to explain. This isn't just about the money, it's about betraying our family. In the midst of this chaos, strange things began happening. Anonymous emails containing personal information. Hang-up calls at odd hours. Twice I found my office door unlocked when I was certain I'd secured it. Then packages started arriving, photocopies of my teenage medical records, old school reports, even photos of Samantha at school events I hadn't attended. The message was clear: someone was watching us, someone with access to my past. I installed security systems at home, and the office changed all passwords and started varying my routes to work. But the feeling of being hunted remained. One night, reviewing security footage, I noticed a familiar car parked across from our house multiple times over several weeks. I zoomed in on the driver during a daylight pass and found myself staring at my father's face, older but unmistakable. My blood ran cold. After 7 years of silence following my mother's visit, why was William Matthews stalking his daughter and granddaughter? What could he possibly want now? The answer arrived in the form of a certified letter 3 weeks later, as the Kevin situation finally reached settlement. My father had been gathering information, building a case, but for what I couldn't have imagined in my darkest nightmares. Miss Walker special delivery requiring signature. The courier at my office door held out an electronic tablet for me to sign. It was a Friday afternoon, and I'd been reviewing applications for a new operations director. We were finally recovering from the financial damage of Kevin's embezzlement. The thick manila envelope bore the logo of Greenfield Morris and Associates, a law firm I didn't recognize. Inside was a stack of legal documents with a cover letter that stopped my heart. Dear Miss Walker, please be advised that our firm represents William and Patricia Matthews in the matter of Matthews v. Walker regarding claims of financial compensation for intellectual property and family business contributions, as well as grand parental visitation rights. My hands trembled as I read further. My parents, who had thrown me out as a pregnant teenager and ignored my existence for over 2 decades, were suing me for 1. Financial compensation for business concepts and ideas discussed in the Matthews household during defendant's upbringing that formed the foundation of Mediclean Solutions. 2. Grant parental visitation rights to Samantha Walker as provided under state law. 3. Recognition of Mediclean Solutions as a family enterprise with profit-sharing entitlements. The absurdity would have been laughable if it wasn't so infuriating. My father, who had worked at a bank and had never shown the slightest interest in entrepreneurship, was claiming my business concepts originated from him. My mother, who had hung up when I called to tell her about Samantha's birth, was demanding court-ordered access to her now adult granddaughter. And they wanted my money, the money I'd earned through years of backbreaking work, while they enjoyed their comfortable life without the inconvenience of a struggling daughter. I called my attorney immediately. They don't have a case, Rachel assured me after reviewing the documents. But that doesn't mean they can't cause damage. Lawsuits like this can drag on, drain resources, and create public relations nightmares. Why now? I asked. After all these years. Let me do some digging, she promised. The results of her investigation confirmed what I'd suspected. My father had lost most of their retirement savings in bad investments. The house I'd grown up in was in foreclosure. The timing aligned perfectly with my recent profile in Business Insider, which had mentioned Mediclean's estimated value at nearly $20 million. But Rachel uncovered something else, something far more disturbing. My father hadn't just been driving by our house. He'd been following me for months, documenting my schedule, taking photos, even approaching former employees for information about the company. This is beyond a nuisance lawsuit, Rachel warned. This is borderline stalking. We should consider a restraining order. That evening, I sat Samantha down to explain the situation. At 22 and recently graduated from college with a marketing degree, she'd joined Mediclean as our marketing director, bringing fresh ideas and energy to the company. These people, your grandparents, they're strangers to us, I explained. They made their choice a long time ago not to be part of our lives. Samantha's expression grew strange, a mixture of guilt and defiance. Actually, Mom, they're not exactly strangers. To me, anyway. The floor seemed to shift beneath me. What are you talking about? Grandma Patricia has been writing to me for years, since I was 16. She pulled out her phone, showing me an email thread with hundreds of exchanges. She found me through social media. She explained that they made a terrible mistake, that they've regretted it every day. I felt physically ill. You've been in contact with them behind my back for 6 years. I was curious. You never talked about them except to say they weren't in our lives. I wanted to understand why. And what reason did she give for abandoning her pregnant teenage daughter? I asked bitterly. She said Grandpa forced her to choose and she made the wrong choice. She's been trying to make up for it. By poisoning my daughter against me, by helping him gather information for a lawsuit. She didn't know about the lawsuit, Samantha insisted. That's all, Grandpa. And she wasn't poisoning me, she mostly asked about my life, my interests. She sent birthday cards. She was just being a grandmother. The betrayal cut deep. My own daughter secretly communicating with the people who had caused me so much pain. The people now trying to claim credit for everything I'd built. Did you tell her about the business, about our finances? Nothing specific, just general stuff about how well we were doing, I thought. I thought maybe someday we could all reconcile. There's no reconciling with people who abandon you when you need them most, then show up with their hands out when you've made something of yourself. I stood up, needing to put physical distance between us. They're not who you think they are, Sam. You never even gave them a chance to change, to make amends. Your grandmother showed up once in 22 years, and that was to ask for money for your grandfather's cancer treatments, which apparently he recovered from well enough to stalk us and file frivolous lawsuits. The argument escalated, with Samantha defending people she'd never actually met in person, believing the sanitized version of events they'd fed her. It ended with her storming out of the house, something that had never happened before. Alone in the kitchen, I felt the weight of the past 2 decades crashing down on me. My business was under attack, my relationship with my daughter was strained, and the people who had thrown me away like garbage were now trying to claim a share of everything I'd worked for. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to cry deep, racking sobs that came from a place of exhaustion and betrayal. When the tears finally stopped, I made myself a cup of tea and sat at the window watching for Samantha's return. My phone buzzed with a text from her, staying at Kaylee's tonight. Need space to think. I stared at the message, feeling the distance growing between us. Distance my parents had carefully cultivated. This wasn't just about money anymore. They were trying to take the one thing I valued above all else, my relationship with my daughter. As the night deepened, anger replaced despair. They had taken enough from me. They would not take this too. It was time to stop playing defense. The stress was becoming unbearable. In the weeks following the lawsuit's arrival, I developed migraines so severe they sent me to the emergency room twice. The business suffered as I missed meetings and deadlines. Samantha and I were walking on eggshells around each other, our once close relationship strained by her contact with my parents. One morning, I found myself sitting in my car outside the office, unable to summon the energy to go inside. My phone rang. Rachel, my attorney. Hazel, are you coming to our strategy meeting? I don't know if I can do this, I admitted, my voice breaking. Maybe I should just settle. Give them some money to go away. That's exactly what they're counting on, Rachel replied sharply. Look, I need you to come to my office. There's something I want to discuss that couldn't wait for our scheduled meeting. 2 hours later, I sat across from her desk as she outlined a radically different approach. Instead of just defending against their claims, we go on the offensive, she explained, spreading documents before me. We file a countersuit for emotional distress, parental abandonment, stalking, harassment, and attempted defamation. I stared at her. Can we do that? Legally, absolutely. The question is whether you're prepared for what it entails. This would mean publicly documenting everything they did to you, the pregnancy, the abandonment, all of it. Your story would become part of the public record. The thought of exposing my most painful experiences made me physically recoil. I'd spent years carefully controlling my narrative, focusing on my success rather than my struggles. I can't, I whispered. Rachel leaned forward. Hazel, listen to me. These people threw you out like trash when you were a vulnerable child. They ignored your existence until you built something valuable. Now they want to swoop in and claim credit for your success while driving a wedge between you and Samantha. They're counting on your shame and your desire for privacy to protect them. Her words hit home. For 22 years, I'd carried the shame of being the pregnant teenager, the unwed mother, the family disappointment. I'd internalized their narrative even as I fought against it. What would this countersuit actually accomplish? Best case, the judge dismisses their claims and awards you damages. Worst case, they're forced to answer for their actions under oath in public. Either way, Samantha learns the unvarnished truth about her grandparents. I took the weekend to consider our options, then called Rachel Monday morning. "Let's do it," I said. "The countersuit, the whole thing. I'm done hiding." Over the next month, we built our case methodically. I provided detailed accounts of my parents' actions, financial records showing how I'd built Mediclean entirely on my own, and documentation of my father's stalking behavior. Rachel subpoenaed my parents' financial records, revealing their desperate money problems and the timing of their lawsuit immediately following my Business Insider profile. We were preparing for depositions when an unexpected ally appeared. Susan Kennedy, my high school counselor, had seen a brief mention of the lawsuit in a local business publication and reached out. "I've been following your success for years," she told me over coffee. "What you've accomplished is remarkable." When I explained the full situation, her face darkened. "There's something you should know, Hazel. After you left, I was concerned about your welfare. I tried to contact your parents several times to arrange mediation to help them understand the support you needed. They never mentioned that, because they refused my calls. When I finally confronted your father at the bank, he told me you'd chosen to leave, that you'd rejected their help." She shook her head. "I knew it wasn't true, but without your testimony, there was little I could do." "Would you be willing to provide a statement for our case?" I asked. "I've kept all my notes from that time," she replied, "including documentation of their refusal to engage in any reconciliation attempts. I'd be happy to testify if needed." Susan's evidence provided a crucial third-party verification of my parents' abandonment, but the most damaging discovery came through the legal discovery process. Rachel uncovered a series of emails between my parents spanning years discussing me and Mediclean. In one particularly damning exchange from 5 years earlier, my father had written, "She's making quite a name for herself with that cleaning business. Would serve her right if we showed up now that she's successful and reminded her where she came from. Maybe she'd finally learn to appreciate what we tried to teach her about consequences." To which my mother had replied, "William, please let it go. She's built a life without us as we forced her to do. We have no right to anything she's created." When Samantha read these emails and other documents from the case file, something shifted. The idealized grandparents of her imagination collided with the reality of who they actually were. "I feel so stupid," she admitted, tears streaming down her face. "Grandma Patricia was so kind in her messages. I never imagined." I held my daughter as she cried. "People are complicated, honey. I'm sure in her way she does care about you. But that doesn't erase what they did. Why didn't you tell me the whole story before?" "I wanted to protect you. And honestly, I was afraid you'd think less of me if you knew I'd been that girl pregnant at 16 thrown out by her family." "Less of you?" Samantha looked at me incredulously. "Mom, knowing the whole story makes me realize just how incredible you are. You built all of this from nothing while I've had every advantage." As our court date approached, my parents' attorney reached out about settlement talks. Rachel advised against it. "We have them on the defensive now," she argued. "If we settle privately, Samantha never hears them admit what they did. And you deserve that public acknowledgement." I agreed. After years of hiding my past, I was finally ready to face it openly and force my parents to do the same. The night before our court appearance, Samantha and I sat on our back deck looking at the stars, just as I had with Kevin years earlier, but with a very different conversation unfolding. "I'm sorry I went behind your back," she said quietly. "I should have trusted that you had reasons for keeping them away from us. And I'm sorry I never trusted you with the full truth," I replied. "We both made mistakes." "Do you think they ever loved you?" she asked after a long silence. I considered the question carefully. I think they loved their idea of me, the daughter who would fulfill their expectations and validate their worldview. When I didn't fit that mold anymore, their love had conditions I couldn't meet. Samantha leaned her head on my shoulder. "I'm glad your love doesn't come with conditions." Never, I promised, putting my arm around her. Not ever. As we sat there, I felt an unexpected sense of peace. Whatever happened in court tomorrow, the most important battle had already been won. My daughter knew the truth. Our relationship was healing, and I was finally ready to face my past without shame. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined. My parents sat at the plaintiff's table, both looking older than their years. My father's face was set in the same stern expression I remembered from childhood, while my mother kept her eyes fixed on her hands. Our attorney, Rachel, organized her materials methodically beside me. Across the aisle, my parents' lawyer, a slick man in an expensive suit, shuffled papers with practiced confidence. Judge Rosario Montgomery, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, entered and called the court to order. Matthews versus Walker, she announced, reviewing the file before her. I've read both complaints and counterclaims. Before we proceed, I want to be clear that I have little patience for frivolous lawsuits that waste this court's time. Are both parties prepared to present their cases? Both attorneys confirmed they were ready. My parents' lawyer went first, spinning a narrative that made me clench my teeth to keep from interrupting. According to him, I was a rebellious teenager who had rejected my parents' guidance and support only to later build a business based on cleaning knowledge and business acumen I'd learned in their home. The defendant's success is built on a foundation of family values and business principles instilled by the plaintiffs, he claimed smoothly. They seek only reasonable compensation for their intellectual and emotional contributions to an enterprise that has made Miss Walker a millionaire while they struggle financially in their retirement years. When it came to the grandparental rights claim, he painted my parents as loving grandparents cruelly cut off from their only grandchild. They have attempted numerous reconciliations over the years, all rebuffed by the defendant, who has systematically alienated her daughter from her extended family. Rachel's cross-examination was surgical. Mr. Matthews, could you please specify exactly what business concepts of yours Miss Walker appropriated for MediClean Solutions? My father cleared his throat. General principles of financial management. Customer service approaches I used at the bank. The importance of reputation. Did you ever work in medical cleaning or healthcare before your daughter founded her company? No, but did you ever provide startup funding, business contacts, or specific industry knowledge to Miss Walker's company? No. In fact, Mr. Matthews, did you have any contact whatsoever with your daughter during the founding and growth of her company? His face flushed. No. Rachel then directed her questions to the abandonment issue. Mr. Matthews, is it true that you ordered your 16-year-old daughter to leave your home upon learning she was pregnant? We gave her a choice, he insisted. She chose to leave rather than follow our rules. And what rule exactly was she breaking by being pregnant and refusing an abortion? She was bringing shame to our family. We had a certain standing in the community. Rachel cut him off. So your community standing was more important than your legal and moral obligation to your minor child. The questioning continued, with Rachel methodically dismantling their claims. She presented the emails between my parents, the documentation of my father's stalking and financial records showing they only became interested in reconciliation after MediClean's success was publicized. When Susan Kennedy took the stand, her testimony was devastating to my parents' case. I made no fewer than 12 attempts to contact the Matthews family about supporting their daughter, she stated firmly. They refused all communication. When I finally confronted Mr. Matthews in person, he told me, and I quote, "She made her bed, now she can lie in it." This was in reference to a 16-year-old girl who was pregnant, homeless, and trying to finish her education. Throughout the testimony, I kept my composure, though inside I was reliving every painful moment. Samantha sat directly behind me, squeezing my shoulder whenever the testimony grew particularly difficult. When it was my turn to testify, Rachel guided me through my story chronologically. The night I was kicked out, the struggles to survive while pregnant, giving birth alone, building my business from nothing. Did your parents ever offer assistance during this time? Rachel asked. No. The only contact was 7 years after I'd been kicked out, when my mother appeared asking for money for my father's cancer treatments. I provided financial assistance then, despite having no relationship with them. And regarding their claim to have attempted numerous reconciliations, the only reconciliation attempts were my mother secretly contacting my daughter behind my back and my father stalking our home and business. The cross-examination was brutal. My parents' attorney tried to paint me as an ungrateful daughter who had exaggerated my struggles for sympathy. Isn't it true that you've used your rags to riches story to promote your business? That being the abandoned teen mom who made good has been valuable to your brand. I've never publicly discussed my personal history until forced to by this lawsuit, I replied calmly. My company's reputation is based on service quality and professionalism, not my personal background. By the end of the 2-day hearing, Judge Montgomery's expression had shifted from professional neutrality to poorly concealed disgust as she looked at my parents. When both sides had presented their cases, she took only a brief recess before delivering her ruling. This court finds the plaintiff's claims without merit and dismisses them in their entirety, she began. Furthermore, the court grants the defendant's countersuit for emotional distress and harassment. The plaintiffs will pay damages of $150,000 and all legal costs associated with these proceedings. Additionally, a restraining order is granted prohibiting the plaintiffs from contacting the defendant or her daughter without prior written consent. She fixed my father with a stern look. Mr. Matthews, this court is disturbed by your pattern of behavior. Abandoning a minor child, then stalking her years later for financial gain, demonstrates a profound moral failure that this court cannot remedy. I strongly suggest you seek counseling. As the judge left the courtroom, my father slumped in his seat. For the first time in my life, I saw him look defeated. My mother was openly weeping. Despite everything, a small part of me ached at their pain. In the lobby, as we prepared to leave, my father approached us, stopping at the distance specified by the restraining order. Hazel, he called, his voice breaking. I was wrong. So terribly wrong. The things I said to you that night. The way I treated you. There's no excuse. I stared at him, this diminished version of the man who had loomed so large in my nightmares. No, there isn't. I've spent years telling myself I was teaching you responsibility. That was a lie. I was protecting my own pride, my reputation. And I've paid for it by missing everything your life, Samantha's life. Tears filled his eyes. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed to say it finally. I'm sorry. It wasn't a perfect apology. It came 22 years too late after a failed attempt to take what was mine. But it was perhaps the only honest thing my father had ever said to me. Samantha looked at me questioningly. This was my decision to make. I don't know if I can ever forgive you, I said finally. But I acknowledge your apology. What happens now is up to you. If you want any relationship with Samantha when she's ready, it will be on her terms and with complete honesty about the past. My mother stepped forward then, her face ravaged by tears. Would you allow us to start somewhere, anywhere? I looked at my daughter, who nodded almost imperceptibly. Send an email, I said. We'll see. As we walked away, Samantha took my hand. Are you okay? I considered the question carefully. I think I will be. For the first time, I feel like the past is actually behind me, not chasing me. That night, we celebrated with Rachel and the MediClean executive team at my home. As champagne flowed and conversation buzzed around me, I slipped away to the back deck for a moment alone. The stars shone brilliantly overhead, the same stars that had witnessed my journey from terrified, pregnant teenager to successful businesswoman and mother. I thought about all the people who had abandoned me, and those few who had helped along the way, Susan Kennedy, Nurse Tara, even Kevin before his betrayal. Each chapter had shaped me, hardened me, but never broken me. Samantha found me there, wrapping a shawl around my shoulders against the night chill. What are you thinking about? Family, I replied. Not the one you're born into, but the one you build. The people who choose to stay when things get hard. She leaned against the railing beside me. Do you regret any of it? If you could go back and change things. I wouldn't change a thing, I said with certainty. Every struggle led me to you, to the life we've built. Even the pain served its purpose. The door opened behind us as Rachel joined us, champagne glasses in hand. To victory, she toasted. And to writing your own story. As we clinked glasses, I added my own silent toast to the girl who survived and the woman she became. The lawsuit that was meant to destroy me had instead set me free. My parents no longer had power over me, not my memories, not my success, not my relationship with my daughter. Whatever happened next would be on my terms, not theirs. And that after 22 years was justice enough. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have countersued or just settled to avoid the public exposure? Have you ever had to stand up to family members who tried to take advantage of your success? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if my story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience, and share with anyone who might need to be reminded that your past doesn't determine your future. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember that you're stronger than whatever life throws at you, and sometimes the family you choose is more important than the one you're born into.